The signal came on a Tuesday. It wasn't the kind of signal SETI had spent decades searching for. No prime numbers, no hydrogen frequency broadcasts, no carefully encoded messages meant for first contact. Instead, it was the electromagnetic equivalent of overhearing an argument through apartment walls. Fragments of communication between two vast alien fleets, neither of which seemed to know their transmissions were reaching Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her cramped office at the Arecibo Observatory, running the analysis for the 12th time. The data couldn't be wrong. Two distinct alien civilizations were engaged in what appeared to be a heated territorial dispute just beyond Mars' orbit. More worrying still, fragments of their communications mentioned Earth with increasing frequency. "They've been watching us," she muttered, scanning through the latest decryption attempts. "All this time, they've been watching us." The Meridians, as humans would come to know them, were a species that had mastered biological engineering to such a degree that they could reshape entire ecosystems. Their ships were grown, rather than built, massive organic vessels that moved through space like cosmic whales. The Vex, their ancient rivals, were their opposite in every way. A civilization that had merged with their technology, existing as much in computer networks as in physical form. Both wanted Earth, not for its resources, not for its strategic position, but for something far more valuable: humanity's potential as a weapon. Admiral James Rodriguez stood before the United Earth Defense Council, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display showing the alien fleet's positions. "They think we're primitive," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the underground chamber. "Both sides are operating under the assumption that humanity would be easy to subjugate and reshape into their image. The Meridians want to elevate us through biological enhancement. The Vex want to liberate us through technological integration." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for first contact, but not like this. Not as pawns in someone else's war. "Their first official contact attempts will come within the week," Rodriguez continued. "Both sides will try to court us diplomatically at first. When that fails, and it will fail, they'll attempt to force our compliance. That's when we show them why that's a mistake." The council's chief strategist, Dr. Maya Patel, stepped forward. "Our apparent technological limitations are our greatest advantage. Both sides think we're centuries behind them. Neither has any idea about Project Twilight." Project Twilight had been humanity's best-kept secret for over 50 years. While the world's governments publicly struggled with basic rocket technology and argued about moon bases, hidden facilities across the globe had been developing technologies that would make both the Meridians and Vex reassess their assumptions about human capabilities. The first contact attempts came exactly as predicted. The Meridian vessel was beautiful. A massive structure that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, its organic hull shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. The Vex ship was its antithesis: angular, geometric, its surface covered in countless small apertures that seemed to study Earth with cold calculation. Their messages were equally opposed in nature, but identical in their presumption: join us, or be forced to join us. Earth's response was silence. This confused both alien forces. They had expected either eager acceptance or primitive fear. Instead, they got nothing. No official response, no military posturing, no signs of panic among the population. Just silence. When the Meridians attempted to establish a beachhead by landing a small force near the Indian Ocean, they found their organic ships suddenly unable to maintain their form, affected by a tailored virus that humanity had developed specifically for their biotech. When the Vex tried to penetrate Earth's digital infrastructure, they found themselves tangled in a defensive system so alien to their understanding that their first cyber warfare team was effectively lobotomized. These were just warning shots, but they carried a clear message. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. "Send the message," Rodriguez ordered, watching as both alien fleets reeled from their failed first attempts at coercion. The message was broadcast simultaneously in all known alien frequencies, encoded in both Meridian and Vex communication protocols. It was short, clear, and carried the weight of a species that had spent its entire history preparing for this moment. We choose neither. Any further attempts to force our hand will be met with appropriate response. We are willing to discuss peaceful cooperation, but only as equals. You have 1 hour to withdraw beyond the orbit of Saturn. As the alien fleets processed this unexpected development, humanity's hidden capabilities were already in motion. Orbital platforms that had masqueraded as debris began powering up. Defense systems that had been disguised as natural formations revealed their true nature. And in secure facilities across the globe, humanity's real technological achievements stood ready. The game of pretend was over. The aliens had forced humanity's hand, but not in the way they had intended. Now they would learn why assuming humanity would be an easy conquest was their first and possibly last mistake. The Meridian and Vex fleets did not withdraw. In the command center beneath Mount Cheyenne, Admiral Rodriguez watched the massive holographic display as both alien armadas maintained their positions, their ships spreading out in classic attack formations. They had interpreted humanity's warning as a bluff. After all, how could a species that had barely reached its own moon pose any real threat? They're launching fighters, Lieutenant Emma Santos reported, her hands dancing over the quantum interface. Both fleets. Looks like they're planning to overwhelm our orbital defenses with small craft while their capital ships maintain distance. Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. Exactly as predicted. Execute silent protocol. Throughout the solar system, humanity's true fleet emerged from hiding. They didn't decloak like in science fiction stories. They had never been cloaked at all. Instead, they had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as something far more mundane: space junk. For decades, humanity had complained about the growing problem of orbital debris, while secretly launching thousands of ships designed to look like nothing more than abandoned satellites and rocket stages. Now these vessels shed their deceptive outer shells like butterflies emerging from chrysalises. The human ships were unlike anything the aliens had seen. Where the Meridians relied on organic technology and the Vex on hyper-advanced robotics, humanity had developed something entirely different. Each vessel was a hybrid of multiple approaches, part conventional engineering, part quantum mechanics, part biological computing. They were smaller than their alien counterparts, but infinitely more adaptable. Signal from the Meridian flagship, Santos announced. They're demanding an explanation. Let them wait, Rodriguez replied. Lieutenant Chen, begin Phase 2. The human fleet didn't engage the alien fighters directly. Instead, they executed a maneuver that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Each ship released what appeared to be a cloud of metallic dust. The aliens initially dismissed this as primitive chaff, until the dust began to move with purpose. Humanity had learned early in their secret space program that trying to match alien technology directly would be futile. Instead, they had developed systems that worked on entirely different principles. The dust was actually billions of microscopic robots, each one carrying a fraction of a larger artificial intelligence. Alone, they were virtually harmless. Together, they formed a neural network more complex than any computer either alien race had encountered. The alien fighters found themselves engulfed in clouds of intelligent particles that didn't so much destroy them as simply repurpose them. Meridian bioships found their organic components reworked at the cellular level. Vex vessels discovered their computer systems overwhelmed by an intelligence that operated on principles they couldn't begin to comprehend. Meridian fleet is pulling back, Santos reported. Their remaining fighters are retreating. The Vex are holding position, but they've stopped launching new craft. Rodriguez nodded. Open a channel to both flagships. I think they're ready to listen now. The message he sent was simple. That was less than 1% of our defensive capabilities. We will demonstrate more if necessary, but we would prefer to talk. Your species have been fighting each other for millennia. Perhaps it's time for a new perspective. In the tense hours that followed, both alien fleets maintained their distance while their leaders processed this dramatic shift in their understanding of humanity. They had assumed Earth was a primitive world ripe for conquest or conversion. Instead, they had found a species that had anticipated their arrival and prepared accordingly. But humanity's true advantage wasn't just technological, it was philosophical. While the Meridians and Vex had each pursued their own path of advancement, with single-minded determination, humanity had remained adaptable, willing to explore multiple approaches simultaneously. Their ships carried biological computers like the Meridians, quantum systems like the Vex, and dozens of other technologies neither species had considered combining. New transmission from both fleets, Santos announced. They're requesting permission to send diplomatic envoys. Rodriguez shared a knowing look with his command staff. This was just the beginning. The aliens had forced humanity to reveal some of their capabilities, but they still had no idea what else Earth had been developing during its centuries of apparent technological infancy. Grant permission, he ordered, but make sure they understand. This is a diplomatic meeting between equals. Any attempt to use this opportunity for infiltration or assessment of our capabilities will be met with demonstrations of systems they haven't seen yet. As the alien diplomats prepared to board Earth's orbital station, Rodriguez reflected on how quickly the situation had changed. Just days ago, two of the most powerful civilizations in known space had thought they could simply absorb humanity into their ancient conflict. Now they were scrambling to understand how they had so drastically underestimated mankind's potential. But this was just the first move in a much longer game. Humanity had revealed their existence as a major power, but they had only shown a fraction of their true capabilities. The real question was, how would the galaxy's political landscape change now that humanity had joined the game? The Meridian diplomatic vessel looked like a floating garden, its organic hull sprouting what appeared to be crystalline flowers as it docked with the International Unity Station. In contrast, the Vex ship was a perfect sphere, its metallic surface constantly shifting with mathematical patterns. Both were impressive displays of their respective technologies, and both were being systematically scanned by human sensors far more advanced than either species suspected existed. Dr. Maya Patel stood in the station's diplomatic chamber, watching the alien representatives approach. The Meridian ambassador was a tall, graceful being whose skin seemed to shift colors with their emotions. The Vex sent what appeared to be a holographic projection, though human sensors detected a quantum presence far more complex than a simple image. "Welcome to Unity Station," Patel said, her voice calm and measured. "I trust your journey through our defense grid was educational." The Meridian ambassador's skin flickered with shades of blue, their species' indication of diplomatic caution. "Your defenses are impressive, more impressive than we have been led to believe possible." "Led to believe by whom?" Patil asked, though she already knew the answer. Human intelligence networks have been monitoring both species' information channels since long before first contact. The holographic Vex representative spoke, its voice a harmonious blend of tones. "Our respective civilizations have extensive intelligence networks. Yet somehow your species managed to develop technologies that escaped our notice. This requires explanation." "Does it?" Patil smiled. "Or perhaps it requires you to question your assumptions about younger species." But even as the diplomatic dance continued on Unity Station, the Meridians were already launching their true offensive, not with weapons, but with influence. Across Earth, seemingly independent political movements began arising, all advocating for closer ties with the Meridian Alliance. Social media networks saw an explosion of pro-Meridian sentiment, while economic analysts suddenly discovered compelling reasons why Earth should align itself with organic technology over synthetic. What the Meridians didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this type of warfare longer than any other. Since the dawn of the Internet age, Earth's defense systems had included mimetic protection, sophisticated AI systems designed to identify and counter external manipulation of human society. In the Planetary Defense Center beneath Geneva, Colonel Sarah Chen, sister to the astrophysicist who first detected the alien transmissions, watched the Meridian Influence campaign unfold on her quantum displays. "They're good," she admitted, studying the patterns of information flow. "Their mimetic algorithms are sophisticated. If we hadn't spent the last century developing countermeasures, this might have actually worked." Her team had already identified the key nodes of Meridian Influence: artificial trending topics, synthetic social media accounts, and even a few compromised human assets. But rather than shut them down immediately, humanity's counterintelligence teams were using them to feed false information back to the Meridians. Let them think their campaign was succeeding. Let them believe humanity was falling for their manipulation. The Vex, meanwhile, had their own strategy. Rather than attempt broad social manipulation, they targeted key individuals in Earth's power structure with offers of technological transcendence. What they didn't realize was that every single one of their targets was actually an AI construct, part of humanity's elaborate deception network. The breaking point came 3 weeks into the diplomatic mission. The Meridians, convinced their influence campaign was succeeding, attempted to trigger a synchronized series of political upheavals across Earth. The Vex, believing they had successfully compromised key human leaders, launched what they thought would be a bloodless coup. Both attacks failed spectacularly. The Meridian-backed protests evaporated as Earth's mimetic defense systems revealed the artificial nature of the movement. The Vex's attempted technological takeover found itself trapped in a quantum maze of humanity's design, their most sophisticated AI constructs outmaneuvered by systems they hadn't even detected. In Unity Station's diplomatic chamber, Dr. Patel faced the alien representatives again. This time, there was no pretense of diplomatic niceties. "Did you really think," she asked, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's collective disappointment, "that we wouldn't be prepared for these exact scenarios? We've spent centuries watching you fight each other, learning from your mistakes, developing countermeasures to every form of warfare you've ever conceived." The Meridian ambassador's skin had turned a deep purple, a sign of profound shock in their species. The Vex representative's holographic form flickered with what human empaths recognized as confusion. "Your species," the Vex representative said slowly, "is far more dangerous than we understood." "No," Patel corrected. "We're far more prepared than you understood. There's a difference. We never wanted to be dangerous. We simply refused to be vulnerable." As if to emphasize her point, new holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the full extent of humanity's defensive networks. The aliens saw, for the first time, the true complexity of Earth's protection systems, layers upon layers of technological and social defenses, each designed to counter specific forms of warfare, whether physical, digital, or mimetic. "We are willing to maintain diplomatic relations," Patel continued. "We are even willing to engage in cultural and technological exchange, as equals. But any further attempts to manipulate or control humanity will be met with consequences neither of your species is prepared to face." As the alien representatives digested this information, Earth's hidden capabilities were shifting again, preparing for whatever would come next. The Meridians and Vex had tried to force humanity's hand through subterfuge and manipulation. Instead, they had only succeeded in revealing just how thoroughly humanity had prepared for their arrival. The game was changing, and neither alien species was sure they understood the rules anymore. The true power of humanity's preparation became apparent not through force of arms, but through the quiet mastery of information. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a quantum computing facility unknown to either alien species, Dr. Elena Torres watched as humanity's most sophisticated AI systems infiltrated both the Meridian's biological data networks and the Vex's quantum communications grid. They never questioned why we were so insistent on studying their communication protocols, she mused, watching streams of alien data flow across her holographic displays. They were so convinced of their technological superiority that they thought nothing of sharing their basic systems with us. What neither alien civilization realized was that humanity had turned their own arrogance into a weapon. Every diplomatic exchange, every technological demonstration, every shared communication protocol had been an opportunity for Earth's systems to learn, adapt, and infiltrate. The Meridians' biological quantum networks, which they believed impossible for primitive humans to comprehend, had been compromised within hours of their first transmission to Earth. The Vex's supposedly impenetrable quantum encryption had been broken not through brute force computation, but through an entirely different approach to mathematics that they hadn't considered possible. "Begin Phase 4, Torres commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Across the solar system, human quantum systems began their real work. They didn't attack or disrupt the alien networks. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they began subtly altering the flow of information, changing the context of communications in ways so subtle that neither species initially noticed. Meridian battle plans were quietly modified to reveal critical weaknesses. Vex strategic assessments were adjusted to show vulnerabilities that didn't exist. But most importantly, humanity began seeding both networks with information about each other, carefully selected truths, and crafted deceptions that would shatter the foundations of their centuries-old conflict. In the Unity Station's observation deck, Admiral Rodriguez watched the distant alien fleets, knowing that humanity's real battle was being fought in the invisible realm of data and information. "Status report," he commanded. "The Meridian command structure is showing signs of internal disagreement," Lieutenant Santos reported. "Their leadership is beginning to question their historical records of the conflict with the Vex. The information we planted about the true origins of their war is causing significant disruption. And the Vex. Their quantum networks are experiencing what they believe to be logic conflicts in their historical databases. They're discovering errors in their records that suggest their entire understanding of the Meridian threat was based on corrupted data. Neither alien species suspected that humanity had not only penetrated their networks, but had gained enough understanding of their psychology and social structures to know exactly how to shake their convictions without triggering their suspicions. The Meridians, who prided themselves on their organic technology and evolutionary superiority, were discovering evidence that their biological advancement had been accidentally influenced by ancient Vex technology, a truth humanity had discovered in their centuries of secret observation, now carefully revealed to create maximum impact. The Vex, who had built their entire civilization on the premise of technological purity, were finding proof that their most fundamental algorithms contained elements of Meridian biological computing, another fact humanity had uncovered and held in reserve for this moment. "New transmission from the Meridian flagship," Santos announced. They're requesting an emergency meeting with the Vex leadership, not through intermediaries, direct contact. Rodriguez nodded. This was unprecedented in the centuries-long conflict between the two species. And the Vex response: "They've accepted. Sir, they're requesting that humanity mediate the discussion." In her underwater command center, Dr. Torres allowed herself a small smile as she watched the data streams shift and change. The alien networks were lighting up with discussions, debates, and discoveries, all carefully orchestrated by human information warfare systems that had been preparing for this moment for generations. "They still think they're in control of their own networks," she observed. "They have no idea that every revelation, every discovery, every moment of doubt has been carefully crafted by our systems." The human approach to warfare had evolved far beyond what either alien species could comprehend. While they had focused on weapons and shields, humanity had learned to wage war through information and understanding. They had turned their perceived weakness, their late arrival on the galactic stage, into their greatest strength. As the alien leaders prepared for their historic meeting, humanity's networks continued their invisible work, reshaping the galaxy not through force, but through the careful application of truth and doubt. The Meridians and Vex had tried to force humanity into their war. Instead, humanity had found a way to force them into peace. The Great Hall of Unity Station had been transformed for this moment. The circular chamber, with its sweeping views of Earth below, now hosted the most significant diplomatic gathering in known galactic history. The Meridian High Council, their bioorganic forms shifting with iridescent patterns of anxiety and hope, sat across from the Vex consensus, their quantum-projected avatars flickering with complex algorithms that betrayed their uncertainty. Between them stood humans, not as mediators of a conflict they had been dragged into, but as architects of a peace neither side had thought possible. Dr. Maya Patel stood at the central podium, her calm demeanor masking the weight of the moment. For centuries, she began, your civilizations have been locked in a conflict based on fundamental misunderstandings and manipulated histories. Today, we offer you something neither side expected when you tried to force humanity into your war. The truth. The holographic displays activated, showing data streams that both species recognized from their own networks. But now they saw them differently, saw how their own histories had been distorted, not by humanity, but by the fog of a war that had gone on so long its original causes had been lost. Your conflict began not as a war of ideology, Patel continued, but as a simple resource dispute that spiraled out of control. Over generations, both sides adapted and evolved specifically to fight each other, becoming more extreme versions of yourselves until your differences seemed irreconcilable. The Meridian First speaker's skin rippled with shades of revelation. How can you be certain of this? Because Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward. While you were watching us, thinking us primitive, we were studying both of your civilizations. We saw patterns you couldn't see because you were too close to them. We found truths you had forgotten because they didn't fit your narratives of conflict. The Vex consensus's primary avatar shifted, its geometric patterns rearranging in what human systems recognized as deep calculation. Our analysis suggests that the data you have provided is authentic, but this creates a logical paradox in our understanding of our own history. No, Dr. Torres spoke up from her quantum projection from the Pacific facility. It creates an opportunity. Both of your civilizations have spent centuries evolving to fight each other. Imagine what you could achieve if you evolved to work together instead. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity's networks had not just uncovered the truth, they had found ways to present it that neither species could reject. The Meridian's biological computing networks confirmed the authenticity through their own protocols. The Vex's quantum algorithms found no flaws in the logical chains presented. But humanity's masterstroke wasn't just in revealing the truth, it was in what they offered next. Earth is prepared to share certain technologies with both of your civilizations, Patel announced. Not weapons, not defenses, but something far more valuable. Adaptation protocols. The alien representatives stirred. They had seen humanity's ability to combine different technological approaches in ways neither of their species had considered possible. The prospect of understanding even a fraction of that capability was compelling. These protocols, Rodriguez explained, will allow your civilizations to begin understanding each other's technological approaches. The Meridians can learn to interface their biological systems with synthetic components. The Vex can explore the integration of organic computing into their networks, not to become like each other, but to grow beyond the limitations your conflict has imposed on you. The offer was both generous and strategic. By sharing technology that would help both species grow beyond their traditional boundaries, humanity was ensuring that any future conflict would be far more difficult. More importantly, they were creating a dependency. Both species would need human expertise to fully utilize these new capabilities. But understand this, Patel's voice hardened slightly. This offer comes with conditions. Any attempt to use these technologies for military purposes will result in their immediate deactivation. Any effort to reverse engineer them for warfare will fail. We've made certain of that. The aliens were beginning to understand the full scope of humanity's capability. The species they had thought to be primitive had not only penetrated their most secure networks, but had developed technologies so advanced they could control how their gifts were used even after sharing them. You tried to force humanity into your war, Rodriguez concluded. Instead, we're offering to help you build a peace that will benefit all our species. The choice now is yours. The response was unprecedented in the history of either alien civilization. The Meridian High Council and the Vex Consensus, after centuries of conflict, voted unanimously to accept humanity's terms. As the diplomatic proceedings concluded, Dr. Torres watched the data streams from her underwater command center. The alien networks were alive with discussion, planning, and something neither species had expressed in centuries: hope. They still don't fully understand, do they? Her AI assistant noted. They don't realize that this peace is just the beginning of humanity's influence on galactic society. Torres smiled. They don't need to understand yet. They tried to force us into being their weapons. Instead, we've become something far more powerful. Their conscience, their mediators, their guides to a future they couldn't imagine on their own. Above Earth, the once hostile alien fleets began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in contemplation of a new era. They had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species they could mold into weapons for their ancient war. Instead, they had found something far more dangerous, a species that had learned from their mistakes and had grown strong enough to enforce peace. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity, no longer pretending to be primitive, would help shape its future.